Hello and welcome to Success is Never Accidental. My name is Lynn Peyton and I'm passionate about helping individuals and organizations to get better outcomes and to feel more fulfilled. And it's my belief that success in any agency is dependent upon strong leadership. That's why I created and delivered the Core Leadership Program to strengthen leadership capacity in 4 core areas. The C is for communication. Leaders, to be effective, have to be excellent communicators, and that starts with listening to understand. The O is for optimization of all the resources that we have at our disposal, but in particularly to optimize our mindset and to optimize our time. The R is for relationships. Leaders recognize the importance of building trusting relationships and developing powerful networks. And the E is for evaluation. We must constantly evaluate the impact of everything we do and ensure we do more of what works. In this podcast, I get to interview some highly successful leaders across all sectors, globally as well as nationally, so that you can better understand their formula for success and identify the common factors. But nothing changes without action. So each episode also includes a challenge to you to reflect, evaluate, decide, and act. In other words, to do things differently going forward. My guest today is Barbara Salmeron. She is the creator of the Relationship Harmony Masterclass Series and the author of Relationship Harmony Hacks. We're going to explore some of those hacks with Barbara today. Barbara has helped literally thousands of men and women to strengthen and indeed repair their relationships. She is passionate about helping men and women to better understand that we're different. We process things differently. Biologically, we're wired differently. So we're going to look with Barbara at some of her tips for helping us to better understand each other so that we can relate more effectively within our intimate relationships, within families, and within work. Recognizing that relationships can be stressful, she also specializes in helping people manage and reduce their stress. And she's going to share some techniques for doing that, including some fast and easy meditations. We are in for a real treat today, so get out your notebook and welcome Barbara Cole Salmeron. Hi, Barbara, and welcome to Success is Never Accidental. And thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure to be here.
Barbara, tell us a little bit about why you became so fascinated with relationships and getting that better understanding of why it is that men and women can have such difficulty in communicating effectively with each other.
Well, I personally became successful by failing forward. For over a decade, I had these short, failed, painful relationships, and after several of those, after many years, I realized I was the common denominator there, and I was somehow bringing out the worst in men. And so when I started studying men and seeing how they think and operate differently than women, everything changed for me. So I like to say I went from hot mess to happily ever after. Because my very next relationship was with my husband, and we've been together almost 9 years now. So I love the tools that I learned, and now I'm excited about sharing them with others.
And tell us a little bit about your course, the Relationship Mastery course.
I have several master classes that are all standalone topics, and they help women and men to understand not only each other as the opposite sex, but also themselves. We go into the differences between the male and female instincts and how that affects us, not only in our romantic relationships, but also with our families and with our coworkers and clients.
Yeah, so say a little bit more about what are some of the basics about what makes us different, that, you know, how are men wired differently? And what are some of the key things that we as women need to know about men? And then you can do the reverse for us. What makes a successful communication or relationship when men know certain things about women?
Okay, well, the differences boil down to testosterone, and the differences in the brain structure between men and women starts before we're even born. So that's what causes the differences. Now, one of the main differences in communication is men typically need less detail than women are compelled to give. So men want short, sweet, to the point, either state what the problem is or state what it is we need clearly without all the detail. And this goes against the female instinct of typically wanting to provide a lot more detail, wanting to be understood, and wanting to be clear communicators. But ladies, I can tell you that when it comes to communicating with men, less is more, and they will ask questions if they need more detail.
And that's really important in work environment, isn't it? Because we know that despite advances, there is still that glass ceiling for women in many agencies and corporations and institutions. So we have to be conscious in the work environment, if we've got a male boss, that less is more. So sum it up succinctly and allow them to ask more questions.
Absolutely. Yep, that's the way to do it. Maybe, men often want to hear the bottom line or the outcome, and then they can ask if they need more detail.
That's very interesting. And what about a situation where maybe there's a male team leader and everybody on his team are female? What does he need to know in that context?
He needs to learn how to become a good listener. And women typically need to feel safe. And there's more than just physical safety. There's actually 6 dimensions of safety that I go into in my book. And for women to feel safe and heard and understood, that male team leader with a team of females, he will get so much more productivity and cooperation and higher results from that team if they feel heard and understood and respected.
That's very interesting, because one of the things that we always teach about leadership is that to be an effective communicators, leaders need to listen to understand rather than listening to respond. So very, very, very important in a scenario with women on the team that being heard makes them feel safer.
Absolutely, being heard and being understood. So when somebody becomes a really good listener and is able to repeat back, that old, okay, what I heard you say was XYZ, because, our perceptions are so different. And so when I say something to you, you might hear something completely different. And unless you repeat it back to me, we won't know that there's been that gap in communication. So that's a really good way to help all team members feel heard and respected. Respect is a huge thing in the workplace for both men and women.
And clarity is so important as well. And by having people repeat back what they heard gives you the opportunity to ensure that the instruction is clear, the task is clear, the time scale is clear. So a really, really good point. You and I've known each other for a while, and I know you have put heart and soul into your new book, Relationship Hacks. But it wasn't always easy. It's been a long journey. Tell us a little bit about what have been some of the contributing factors to you actually being at the stage where you're launching your book.
Yeah, well, it's been a road. The title of it, this first book, is Relationship Harmony Hacks, and once I get through this first one, I have lots of material for many more. Just coincidentally, I was going through a lot of physical healing the last 3 years while I was also writing the book, and so that has been an interesting journey, but it's also allowed me to put some important information in the book for women, because our medical system doesn't, how shall I say, doesn't always know what's best for the female body. So through my own experience, I've been able to add some of that to the book as well. But it's really been a labor of love. This material has just turned my life around. My husband, as you know, is just the greatest man. And we have an amazing relationship. We call it a 12 out of 10, you know, scale of 1 to 10, it's a 12. And I wouldn't have that had I not learned this material and then gotten certified and licensed to teach it and write and speak, which is what I do now. So I would have sabotaged this relationship just as I did all the other ones had I not really learned what makes men tick. And so it's made me more successful in my business relationships as well.
I know everyone is dying to hear the answer to this question, Barbara. How do we get to a 12 out of 10 relationship? And I know Rick, and I love Rick, and I know why you love Rick,
Yeah.
but you know, it requires work by both parties to get a 5-star relationship. So tell us a little bit about what are some of those important elements.
Oh boy, a little bit of what we've touched on, you know, just like in the workplace, at home, respect, safety, and really listening and understanding each other. Even if, you know, sometimes I say men and women can't understand each other, kind of like fish and birds are never going to understand what it's like to be each other, but really striving to understand, having your partner's back, and trusting that they have your back. And of course, communication, you know, open communication. I like to tell people that invisible expectations do not work in relationships, whether it's romantic or in the workplace. We're not mind readers, most of us. And so having invisible expectations does not help to strengthen a relationship. Men actually appreciate direct, clear communication. They don't pick up hints. So that's some of my advice. And well, I'll just share with you my number one piece of relationship advice is to replace criticism with appreciation. When I started doing that, I mean, my husband feels so appreciated and respected, and I feel honored and cherished, and it's just it works.
And everything that you've just said works in any kind of relationship with friends, with family, and particularly in the workplace. Everybody wants to be appreciated rather than criticized. Everybody wants to be caught out doing the right thing as opposed to forgetting to do something or doing the wrong thing. And that, I think it's so important that we don't make assumptions, regardless of what relationship we're talking about. Be absolutely clear. I was listening to a podcast by a fabulous leadership coach, Andy Stanley, and he's also a pastor of a number of churches in the Atlanta area. And he said, when there's a mist in the pulpit, there's a fog in the church. And I thought that is just so graphic and clear. So as leaders, to be successful as leaders, we have to be really clear in our communication. And you've given us lots of ways that we can take more, pay more heed to the fact that we are giving clear communication, and then test that communication is being heard, and then make sure that we catch people out doing things right and appreciate everybody. And sometimes that's down to appreciating all the different little things that people contribute to the team, because we are all different, and that's what makes us interesting. But I want to go back to your labor of love, because you gave us some clues to your success. You said, A, it was something that you are totally passionate about. Secondly, it's relevant to you and that you've learned through the journey of trying to do the research and be able to communicate it to others. What else? I would say persistence must have been one of the attributes that you show a lot of as well.
I was definitely persistent when I was looking for Mr. Right, and I never thought it would take so long to find him. However, I wasn't ready. So I wasn't, I actually was, I was doing years of personal growth work. And so that is what allowed me to recognize, hey, I'm the common denominator in all of these failed relationships because I only date nice guys. I don't date jerks, but sometimes somehow I was bringing out the worst in them. So because of my personal growth work and my working on myself, I was able to admit to myself that, hey, there's something I'm doing here. And it just so happened that my mentor came to town right after that, and that's when I learned all of this material. I want to say something about assumptions. You mentioned assumptions. So whether it's at home or in the workplace, what is obvious to the male brain is not obvious to the female brain, and vice versa. So a lot of misunderstandings happen in all of our personal relationships when we think, well, it's obvious that she knows this, or it's obvious he knows that I think XYZ. It is, anytime you think something is obvious to the opposite sex, not true. There's a reason why they call it the opposite.
Yeah, and that's a really important point. Going back to something that you said, we have to work on ourselves first, because all the awareness that we create when we do that work helps us to be a better person to offer to anybody else that we're in a relationship with, regardless of what kind of relationship that is. You also talked about a mentor. Why are mentors so critical to success, Barbara?
Well, right now we're enjoying the Olympics on TV, and I challenge anyone to find an Olympic athlete who has gotten there without a coach.
Mm.
There are none. And so, if you want to if you want to waste years and years of your life like I did trying to figure it out on your own, you can go ahead and do that. But with a mentor or a coach, you can shortcut, you can get that professional expertise shared with you. You can really take a deeper look inside yourself or into the process, and just be able to shortcut time and money and not have to take decades to figure it out.
Yeah, we all get there faster, don't we? If we learn from people who've either trod the path before or just excellent coaches and ask us those questions that we need to get better at asking ourselves. You are an accomplished author, you're a platform speaker, you provide mediation, and you do relationship coaching. Why is it important that people reach out and get help? And what prevents people from doing so?
Oh boy. Well, so I've taught tens of thousands of students and coached couples and singles. And the biggest block that I see, again, it goes back to that not being self-aware enough to work on yourself, is when someone says, "Oh, it's all his fault," or all men are dogs, or all women are crazy. If they have that belief and they can't take any accountability for their own results, which we're all responsible for our own results, period, end of story. But if they are not willing to look at that, I actually fire them as a client, because I can't help you if you think you already know everything. So the Buddhists call it beginning with a beginner's mind. Open your mind, be open to learning something new, because the people who think they know everything, there's nothing more for them to learn. So if they love all the results in their life, great, they're doing something right. But if there's something that they want to improve upon, maybe reach out to an expert and see what they could learn and what they could change.
And challenges in relationships are not necessarily something that is going to have a disastrous impact on the relationship. So even those of us who already think we're in healthy relationships, we can all learn something else, can't we? By studying, by going to a course, or by connecting with somebody like you who has really researched this topic.
Absolutely. My book and my master classes are based on research with men and women and couples that started in 1991 with my mentor and my colleagues. So we're talking over 3 decades of research interviews, learning directly from the mouths of men and from the hearts of women exactly what it is they need and they want. And so in my book and my master classes, I give really thoughtful and provoking questions to have conversations with your significant other or even people in the workplace. For example, asking someone else how they experience respect, because we might assume that respect is just a universal thing, but everybody experiences it differently. And I've done a separate poll on just this topic to hundreds of men and women on how they experience respect. It's different for everybody. So when we can have these deep conversations with our boss or our client or our honey at home, we can learn new things about them, even if we've been together for years and years and years, like you and Rodney have.
And one of the things that I do a lot of is team building work within organizations. And one of the things that I always get teams to do is actually look at what are the values that drive the team. So respect always comes up as a value. And you're absolutely right. It means different things to different people, because how I want you to show me respect may not be the same as how you want me to show it to you. So having the conversation is so, so important. And within respect, then there's all those other values of integrity and honesty and transparency and whatever. So, so, so important at home and in the workplace that we have those conversations. What do you do every day to keep yourself on point, Barbara? Have you got disciplines and structures that you do that keep you motivated and focused? Because one of the most isolating things to do in the whole world must be to write a book.
It can be a challenge. Yeah, it can be a challenge. Setting goals and having little incremental steps along the way, I've found very important. I am a person who does well with deadlines. So if there's not a deadline to something, I'll forget about it until it's in emergency status. So for me, putting something on the calendar, having a specific deadline is what really gets me moving. And then just working at it a little bit each day and recognizing too that if I'm having a really off day, maybe I can just give myself the day off and do some self-care. I don't, when it comes to the creative arts, I think anyone will tell you it's really hard to force that creativity when you're just having an off day for whatever reason. So instead, giving ourselves some grace, maybe giving ourselves a day of rest, because when we are in that creative flow or in the zone as an athlete or an executive might say, when we're in the zone, like that work will flow so much easier. And honestly, like the words come out from me faster than I can type when I'm in the zone. But if I'm trying to force it and I'm having a bad day, it's like, you know what? Let's go for a walk on the beach and get an ice cream cone and forgive myself for not being highly productive all the time. It's okay to take a break.
And forgiving ourselves and being kind to ourselves is something we all need to get better at. And alongside the relationship work, and maybe because it's so aligned with it, you do a lot of work on stress management and stress reduction. Have you got any simple techniques that you could offer our listeners today? Because it's easy to get into that anxious mode, but it's also quite easy if we know the strategies to manage that. So could you share something with us?
Absolutely. One of my favorite ways to relieve anxiety, to sharpen focus, or to even help us fall asleep if we're having trouble with that is a simple breath pattern that you can do, and nobody even needs to know that you're doing it. And it's so simple, but I'm telling you, it works. The reason why it works, especially for anxiety or to sharpen our focus, is it takes us out of that state of fight or flight. which we are in way too often in our culture. And that's bad for not only our mental health, but our physical health as well. So I have had to learn how to shift myself out of fight or flight. And here's how I do it, or I use this if I need to fall asleep. All you do is you inhale through the nose and then you exhale for twice as long out the mouth. That's it. Repeat it several times, and you can kind of exhale as if you're blowing out birthday candles, but just exhale longer than you inhale. Do that for several rounds, and that helps to lessen the anxiety and it helps to shift us out of fight or flight, which we can't be productive when we're in that mode, or as productive or as insightful.
And even after just 3 or 4 of those breaths, just naturally your body starts to recalibrate and to just, as you say, be in that more relaxed state. And then you get oxygen to your brain and you think clearer and whatever. Barbara, how can people get in touch with you?
Well, my website is just all 3 of my names, barbaracolesalmeron.com, and you can find me on social media with all 3 names as well. Now, my assistants typically handle all my social media, so you can send me an email, or my phone number's out there everywhere. You can really text message is the best way for people to reach me quickly.
And highly recommend your Facebook posts because they're so simple and you just offer those little words of wisdom each day that people can really embrace. And you know, we always talk on this podcast that success requires action, but everything that you offer is just a little bit of action that just improves our state this day. Thank you, my friend, for sharing so many insights and wisdom with us today. And I look forward to catching up in November if I don't see you again before that.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Lynn.
Well, so many interesting insights from my good friend, Barbara Cole Salmeron. Barbara was honest about sharing that it was her own experiences of failed relationships that caused her to both do some personal growth work, but also to do some more research into male and female instincts and behaviors. And she shared with us some fundamental differences in the brain of the different genders. Something I think we all need to really, really write down is men need less detail than women are compelled to give. And I loved her choice of words there, that compelled to give. Women love generally to provide detail and men want to get to the bottom line. So this is so important for us, not just at home, but in the workplace. And we need to understand that men need to get to the bottom line. They just want the big picture. On the other hand, women need to feel heard and to be understood in order to feel safe. And when we feel safer, we are more productive. And actually, this generally are very, very sound general leadership tips. Avoid assumptions. How often do we say it's obvious? But if it was obvious, the other person would say it. And what Barbara said is, what is obvious to the male brain is not obvious to the female brain and vice versa. So guard against assumptions and also guard against miscommunication by checking out, by repeating, this is what I heard you say. Is that right? So then she talked about factors for a successful couples relationship are about feeling respected, feeling safe, knowing your partner has your back, open communication, and the key, appreciation. She said, replace criticism with appreciation. So again, another important tip for the workplace. Check people out for doing things right. Remember to celebrate successes, appreciate people, and make that a habit and a pattern. Barbara also talked about the importance of having a coach or a mentor because we just get there faster if we take advice from people with relevant expertise. Then we talked about what keeps her on track because writing a book has its challenges. And she said she stays focused by setting goals and moving forward incrementally, breaking those goals down into steps. Also, having deadlines is important. She also said it's important not to force creativity and forgiving herself on those days when she's just not creative. Then I asked her about a tip for relieving anxiety and sharpening our focus. And what she gave us was so simple. So she said, just take several deep breaths, breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth. And remembering that it's important that the exhale is twice as long as the inhale. And this just regulates our breathing and takes us out of fight or flight mode, which is the state we get into when we're anxious. So you can connect with Barbara Cole Salmeron on her website and on social media. And there's always a challenge on these podcasts. So what did you learn today? Where are you miscommunicating? Where are you making assumptions that are not helping your relationships? Which relationship do you need to do some work on, testing out these various tips? Is it a relationship at home? Or is it a relationship at work? But write down now a relationship that you're going to commit to do some work on, and then how you're going to do it. And remember, success is never accidental. So if you're ready to accelerate your personal growth or your business growth, email me now at lynne@lynnepeyton.com.